Darwin began writing this book when he was, I think, 92. So this is the distillation of, of 70 years of life with Baba. And I know when I first went up there, this buddy of mine and I were going around visiting college buddies, and it turned out that the place where he lived was a couple of miles from Schenectady. And we had heard that an elderly couple there, I somehow lost, well, anyway, I'll continue. We heard that this elderly couple had met Baba in Schenectady. So we got the nerve to get on the phone and call him. I was a little shy about it because they didn't, there they are. Martha Clancy has a picture of Darwin, and I can't see if that's Jean there, but anyway, so we went over. They said, come right over, and we were there for about 3.5 hours. And when we left, since we didn't have any particular destination, we said, well, why don't we just move here? And so we did, and Darwin got us jobs at the local nursing home, and we began a life there, going to Darwin's meetings. And in fact, we devised every excuse to see him Darwin and Jean more often than just once a week. We were seeing them 3 times a week, whatever, going out for lunch, shoveling the snow off the roof, any excuse, because they were just adorable. I mean, that house was like, it was like it had such a presence, such a loving presence. It was like the lagoon cabin with apple juice and cookies. They had the longest lasting meetings in America, beginning in 1935. That's when their Baba meetings began. So little did we know what we were, had stumbled in upon. But I know Baba had this all worked out, And I would say it's not surprising that of all the Mandali, Baba would have Darwin write this type of work about the inner life, about cultivating the inner life. And the book is not a summary of Baba's teachings and, about the inner life. We're getting through this book, a personal guide, someone who went all the way to the depths of himself and enjoyed that great intimacy with Baba. And so we have a tour guide to talk about some of the milestones, some of the things that you have to do to clear away any kind of resistance to being in Baba's presence. And of course, Darwin was really encouraged not to feel unworthy or get down about yourself. Baba loves us and adores us unconditionally. And you could see that with Darwin and Jean in their house. To see the two of them in this little house with Jean had pictures all over of Baba in the kitchen and sayings of Baba they've been doing that since the 30s. So you can imagine well, it's not like Anne McAvoy's house, but not quite as many photographs as Anne McAvoy. But, and you just got the feeling that Baba was everything to them. He was their, they loved and adored him, and Baba, you could feel Baba just wanting to, just enjoying and just watching this couple live their life for him, like a mother watching her, children. They were like adorable. But Darwin was a very deep soul, very unassuming. He didn't give advice, rarely, but you just kind of listened to him, and there were little clues that you could get that would help you to go deeper in life with Baba. very encouraging, not anything, you know, good and bad, right and wrong, you know, unworthy. All of that he laid aside, and he, you know, he said it can be done in this life. You know, we don't have to, you know, it's not a distant goal. It's something right now in this moment, if we can just open up to it. So it was great. And many of you went to those meetings or heard them at the center.
So we're reading Effort and Grace. We're on chapter 3, page 12 if you've got a book. If you don't have a book, there's also a PDF version, which may have different page numbering. I included it in the chat box.
Starting with chapter 3. Our Master's loving help.
Yes.
Ideally, we will realize that we can remove our own false self from the scene enough so that Baba can work. We become onlookers observing what is happening. In other words, we are not trying to direct Baba, we are getting out of his way and allowing him to work on us. Darwin Shaw. Sorry, Katie and Jake are here too. So cleaning out the Augean stables, am I saying that right? Augean stables of the subconscious mind requires our close attention and earnest effort. It is not something that is easily done because we are locked into our misconceptions and imprisoned by our perception of who we are, what we are, and what creation is. We have to unlock all these things that keep us bound to a sense of helplessness, limitation, and ignorance.
Go ahead and just read the entire subchapter.
Okay. It really is a Herculean task, much more than we by ourselves can handle. We need the Master's intervention. Meher Baba, the Avatar, being one with universal consciousness and present in every individual mind, is aware that each one of us is really God, but that we are veiled by illusory impressions. Therefore, Baba is not aloof from the individual. He is the embodiment of God's love, and his love is for each one of us. It is not just an overshadowing blanket of love for the masses of people. It is a very personal and intimate love for each individual as an individual. He knows everything about us, all our weaknesses and strengths, and as well as our potential. And he loves us unconditionally. He holds us to his heart very dearly, and he draws us into his being. And this, I feel, is the great blessing of our relationship with him.
Jai Baba, everyone. Okay. How about reading that last 2 sentences? Paula, yeah.
He holds us to his heart very dearly, and he draws us into his being. And this, I feel, is the great blessing of our relationship with him.
Any comments, anything to add to that? Feel free. It's we have no professor here.
I'll say something.
Yeah.
Bob Yeager sent us all Denver people, Boulder people, a little video of Baba yesterday. And it's, I don't know where it is, but it's one of those, it's just a black and white, and it's just him. And he's got his hand to his heart, and he's reaching out, and then he's bringing back. It must be at a Darshan program. And as that was read, it was like, oh my God, that was exactly what was happening. He was drawing us into his heart, and he was reaching out toward us in that way. And it was so beautiful. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Janet. Yeah. Okay, individual flowers.
How about Ken and Betty.
Ah, okay. Like waiting for a flower to grow, Meher Baba is waiting for each one of us to withdraw from illusion. He is always watchful for those who are fed up and ready to turn away from the growth level and more refined. The ego, anxious to preserve its illusory self, relies upon desires for those things that keep our attention riveted to the things of the gross world. It is not very easy to draw our attention away from all the desires and the things of this world. But sooner or later, this must be accomplished, and Baba knows when we are ready to do that kind of work. The Master's work, by and large, is to dissolve our superficial outer shell, to awaken our dormant spiritual consciousness, and to lift our consciousness out of the level of duality, which is all the opposites, gain and loss, beginning and end, pleasure and pain. In other words, he takes us away from the illusory food of the Garden of Eden and gives us the food of the truth. He weans us away from the false, the diffuses of energy of our sanskars, so that they no longer have power over us, eventually wiping them out. But his main task is to turn our attention toward God, toward reality, deepening and expanding our love so that we will long for God, long for reality, for the light, for truth, even at the expense of denying ourselves completely. As the Master within, he goes out of his way to push all of us closer and closer toward our own inner freedom, until finally we are ready to let go of body consciousness altogether and live the life of spirit. He knows exactly what each person needs, and rather than work with people in a general way, he works with each one of us in a unique manner designed to free our consciousness from bindings in the most efficient way. He understands all of our karma and our sanskaric accumulation, and he knows what can be done to help us along. So it is not that we are doing this work on our own, struggling in the dark. Some of our sanskars are tenacious, and they can take years to wear out and see through, so that we are actually free, inwardly free of all these bindings. We have to trust in Baba's ability to work with us in bringing about solutions for becoming more selfless and letting go the veils that are no longer necessary.
Beautiful. Any comments? I mean, this is, in the first part of the book, he outlines the general movement of what's happening, and then he gets into very particular things of how to disentangle ourselves from specific things that keep us from merging with Baba. So, any comments?
I was just going to comment that when he's talking about body consciousness, that it's very kind of interesting with what we're going through now, because all of us have to be very body conscious, but on the other hand, there is that need to also distance ourselves and find the deeper within.
Yeah, this puts this on the line for many
Yeah.
people, you know. But luckily, most of the Baba people are very disciplined about not making ridiculous mistakes, you know, going out to parties or getting to gatherings there. There's only 2 people that I know who, Baba people, who have got coronavirus and they got through it. So we're doing quite well out of the whatever 10,000 or 15,000 Baba lovers in the Western world. I mean, I only know of 2. There may be more, but it's a testament to the discipline that Baba has us involved in, even if we're not aware of it. Yeah.
I think I've heard of possibly 5, but that's not much more.
Just thinking, you know, the little subtitle of this little piece is individual flowers. And then it struck me how Darwin emphasized again that Baba works with us as individuals and so uniquely. And as one of my Baba friends says, he's a busy guy.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm thinking this is just amazing. And that the one thing I keep coming to over and over again is that Baba is so compassionate that all we really need to do sometimes is just be willing to have him help us.
Yep.
You know, just be willing to have him intervene and do it his way for us. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Darwin was very, stressed that very much, is to invite him to live your life, invite him to help you with your life. So there's no resistance to that. And in a world of individuality, you know, we have this kind of conditioning, I'm going to do it all myself. So whatever that I'm going to do it all myself gets challenged by what Baba is offering. You know?
How do you reconcile this idea of, I'm not going to do it, Baba does it, you don't do it all yourself, but at the same time honoring Baba's wish to fulfill our duties to ourselves and others?
Yeah, I mean, that dilemma.
Yeah.
I think, you know, if what you do wholeheartedly, really it is Baba doing it through you. So it gets merged there. Your effort, your loving effort is really him at the background making it happen. Even if you can't separate those things out clearly. You know, if we try to do what we do wholeheartedly, then he's the one that's really behind what we're doing. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Shall we go on? Let's see.
How about Daniel Stone?
Opting out of the duality game, ultimately, Mayor Baba is helping us reconstitute ourselves in the light of the highest truth. As issues or matters that require reconstitution come up in our lives, he helps us see through them and gradually understand ourselves. These experiences force us to be flexible and not identify with the personality self, the false self. We gradually learn to be detached and say, oh, so that's what is happening now. We have to continuously adjust to inner and outer situations. They are constructions of Maya, illusion anyway. But I find that Baba facilitates our ability to cope with whatever is happening. I feel that this work of reconstituting is always going on, and that he is working with each of us, whether we realize it or not. The avatar is completely unlimited and all-powerful. His work within us is unlimited, and all barriers can be resolved through his infinite power, which is an attribute of reality. His power is the power of truth, the sword of truth, slaying the falseness that makes us victims, bound at subjective levels to material things. In fact, most of his work with us is at subjective levels, because, as Mayor Baba said, all finitehood and limitations are subjective and self-created. The only limitations we have are those we have imposed on ourselves. For ages, we have been taking duality as our reality, and the Master is trying to raise us out of that level. We have allowed all sorts of self-created conditions to make us happy or unhappy. When our only, quote, income comes from the Master, we no longer participate in the duality game. He gives us, and we are able to receive continuous light, continuous freedom, continuous reality. His love sustains us and becomes the primary force working through us.
Woo! Any comments? Any observations or reflections? There's the term that Darwin would use. It was the first time I ever heard it, where he referred to the personality self. And, you know, Baba doesn't quite word it that way, but just to go back to my time when I was a young kid, he looked at me one day, and he didn't normally do this, but he looked at me one day and he said, "Jeff, you are not the personality self." Now, I thought, that's me. You know, the whole purpose was to get to know my personality self, go on improving my personality self until I reached the goal. And so here Darwin is saying, you are not the personality self. You know, he would say the personality self, meaning who we are, who we take ourselves to be, he would say is just a storefront for the soul. And we make such a big deal of the window displays, and we change them with the seasons, when we could go inside and enjoy the priceless merchandise inside that Baba has to give us. So I was young, and I just filed that away. I didn't have any place to put that. But over time, you kind of get some space between your consciousness and your personality self, the way you would kind of get some distance between you and your automobile, you know, your souped up automobile. You get some detachment from it. So if someone dents your car, it's not like they dent you. You know what I mean? So the personality self is a tricky thing, because we take it as an incontrovertible fact that we are our personality self, which Darwin said to me early on that we are not. Anyway, that's something to ponder. I had no place to put that, and I'll let you guys figure out what to do with that.
Paul Fusco, go ahead.
Yeah, I have some notes written here from the first time that I went through this reading. And as I was hearing it again and then looking at my notes, it just came back to me yet again. And after I heard this section the first time, I wrote down, Meher Baba is the universal bank, and he exchanges our sanskaras in his divine currency, which is love. And so that line, the last line where he says he loves, sustains us, and becomes the primary force working through us. And it's just like he's a universal bank, and his currency is love, and he exchanges sanskaras. That's what I've written here.
You invest your sanskars and you get love in return.
Yep.
Yep. Not a bad exchange. Any other comments?
Yes, we've got a number.
Yeah.
Mary Ellen, go ahead.
Jeff, can you differentiate, not can you, but is there a difference in Darwin's description of personality self and provisional ego?
Ah, very good question. It's really the same. Ideally, your personality, Darwin would say, don't think of yourself so much as a base of operations, Think of yourself as a conduit. Think of yourself as a vehicle. So the personality self ideally is a vehicle for the deeper love within us rather than a base of operations. So things come through us rather than from us. And that's when Baba said, the provisional ego think that it is I doing this through you, Baba says. So I don't know if that makes that clear.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Were there any other hands there?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think I'm up. Uh-huh. So I was thinking as I read this about the that last comment about the income comes from the master, and what Paul shared also reminded me of what Henry Cashauti had said once many years ago. I heard him say it. Some of you may have heard him say something the same or something similar. That he said we're like all of us are people who are millionaires, and we have all our money in a bank, which is Baba, but we actually sit out, we don't remember that, and we sit outside the bank like beggars, with our cups out, looking for people to give us money, where the money's all right, it's all right there in the bank. All we've got to do is go in there and get it. So
yeah, good.
Yeah.
There's a line from Rumi where he says, with a basket of freshly baked bread on your head, you go from door to door begging for a few dry crusts. That's the...
There's a story that Baba actually would tell about that again, many of you have probably heard, but I heard it from Erich about how there was a man, traveling and he was traveling through the countryside or what have you, and he came across some guys and started traveling with them, and it turned out they were robbers. He didn't know it. And so when he would go to sleep at night, these robbers were sure that he had his money hid somewhere, so they looked everywhere, but they couldn't find the money. And so night after night, after he would go to sleep, they would look, where's the money? They go through all of his belongings and everything they could find. And finally they gave up, and they finally said to the man, we know that you've got money and we've looked everywhere for it, and we're just going to be honest with you because we were looking for it, but just help us understand, where was the money? And he said, oh, it was under my pillow the whole time. And it was, Baba used that as a metaphor.
I think it was under their pillow.
It was under their pillow. Yeah.
Under their pillow, that they didn't think to look.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Anyone else? Well, shall we go on? If
Shraddha, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a little clarification. I've seen references to subjective and objective, and I wanted to ask if that subjective was the same as what he was referring to as the personality self.
The subjective, there's the objective world and our action in the world, and then there are the feelings and thoughts that are behind what we do in the world, our intentions, our motives, and everything. So the subjective realm is to see where our actions are coming from. It's not really necessarily connected with the personality self, but it's the subject before it expresses itself toward an object. So kind of knowing where you're coming from, whether anger or resentment is motivating what you're saying, or whether it's love that's motivating. That's at a subjective level. You're picking that up before it gets expressed into action, into the world.
Got it.
Yeah. Whereas the personality self, ideally, if you can get behind the personality self, you are in a very beautiful subjective state. Then you can see things flow through, and you're not responsible in the same way.
I see.
Them come from the other dimension through you. Like a poet will say this, or a musician will say, this song came to me last night. It didn't come from me, it came in from that other dimension into this dimension. That's
Right.
the beautiful thing.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kathy, go ahead.
Actually, my question got answered, so I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
And McAvoy.
Okay, you want me to read?
Yeah.
You had your hand up.
Oh, I thought you had asked, called on me to read. No, I don't have any questions or comment.
All right, go ahead and read then.
Oh, okay. The Master's constant presence. One of the major inner stances we need to adopt is that of letting love flow while not getting caught up in our current scenario. It is all a passing show. Love is the only real thing that is happening. Our constant becomes the connection with the Master at the center of our being. Then at a lower level, the illusory world is passing by. I feel that we must make efforts to withdraw our attention from all of the illusory happenings more and more, so that we can remain steadfast in a constant relationship with the Master within. When he was in physical form, Baba assured us that with his infinite consciousness, he would be with us always, wherever we were, whatever we were doing, so that our actions would not have a binding effect on us. Naturally, we are not going to purposely do things that would be wrong. This assurance was to give us an inner sense of detachment from illusion, replacing it with his love and presence. Beloved Baba's living presence is something we can have with us all the time. By thinking of him, by focusing on him, with love, and trying to love him more and more. Ultimately, we will be doing this anyway. We will be funneled into that position where we will love God completely with all our hearts. And the sooner we can get to that point, the sooner we will be free from the unnecessary suffering of all the opposites. I was impressed by, because of what's going on today, we must make the effort to withdraw our attention from all of the illusory happenings more and more. I've found it difficult to withdraw my attention from what's going on in the world right now. But when I'm able to, it's great.
Yeah. Well, Baba did say, as you know, if you suffer in the sufferings of others and feel happy in the happiness of others, you are loving God. So feeling the suffering is only because of our empathy, which is really one of the highest forms of love. So there's going to be feeling for others and what they're having to go through. We are very fortunate, most of us, because we're not living from paycheck to paycheck. We're very fortunate, and we can use this time to focus on Baba, but it's hard not to feel for what's going on in this world today. I would say. Yeah.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
So is Darwin saying here that as Baba lovers, whatever, we are doing, at the time, that our actions would not have a binding effect on us? Or is he saying that if we catch what we're doing at the time and think of Baba, then it doesn't have a binding effect on us?
I missed one little section of that. Can you say that again?
Yeah, so in that little paragraph, he said, when he was in his physical form, Baba assured us that with his infinite consciousness, he would be with us always, wherever we were, whatever we were doing, so that our actions would not have a binding effect on us. So is he saying, is Darwin saying that as Baba lovers, we, he takes on those sanskaras so they don't bind us? Or that as Baba lovers, if we think of Baba while we're doing the actions, that they don't have binding effect on us?
Yeah, I know. It's funny. Last time we went through this, someone made the comment about that same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that Darwin would say is Baba is impressionless being. His being is impressionless. So whatever we do in remembering Baba, the impressions are getting dissolved. I wouldn't say completely, but to the extent to which we are living from Baba's love, we're dissolving impressions right and left. Good impressions and bad impressions are getting dissolved in just by what we're expressing. But I wouldn't say that. I mean, we wind up doing things that are binding, even when we're remembering Baba. I mean, I can assure you that's my experience.
Well, because I think part of me is like, especially in days like now, right? And if someone does something, somebody talked about it this morning at RT when they went to go walk along the beach and somebody got angry because they didn't live there or what have you. And they were both Baba lovers. But I kind of think that if you catch that, if you bring your awareness back to Baba, right? And you just know, like, oh, wow, what did I just do? Blah, blah, blah. Baba's in everything. Baba's doing everything. I think in Baba terms, with his love, you're already forgiven. Right?
Yeah, the more you bring Baba into the picture, the more damage control can happen.
That's right.
But I once asked, you might find this interesting, I once asked Erich, what is Baba's forgiveness like? How did you experience Baba's forgiveness? And Erich said, just that when you do something wrong and unkind, but for most people, traditionally, you make this appeal to God and you keep appealing to God until you feel kind of freed of that. It takes time. But he said with Baba, when you do something that's unkind and selfish, the remorse you feel for having been unkind and selfish is the sign that you've already been forgiven. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Remorse dissolves the damage, you might say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard to...
You feel as if you let Baba down. Your heart broken in that. Therefore, there is no binding.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah. The master's constant presence.
Hey, Hugh, would you like to read?
Okay.
Hey, Hugh Flick. Oh, great. Yeah.
This section is integrity of purpose. But Mayor Baba does not expect that we are suddenly going to relinquish everything. It is a matter of growth. Baba is not talking about dilettante discipleship, but 100% dedicated discipleship and complete devotion. What is important is integrity of purpose. This means being true to the ideal one is trying to, being true to the ideal one is trying to attain. In other words, not to have integrity of purpose would mean being willing to set aside one's ideal to pursue things having a lesser value. Once we know the ideal that Baba lays out for us, it becomes our ideal, and we try to be true to it. We discover where we can be more faithful in following our ideal as Baba shows us how it should be done. This 100% dedication comes about not through simply deciding that tomorrow or every Tuesday we're going to work on getting God realization. It comes about when we are matured in consciousness to such an extent that pursuing our beloved ideal becomes a necessity for us. That's pretty good.
Beautiful.
Hey guys, so
oh, good.
This just reminds when you're talking about the provisional ego. I sort of have this concept in my mind where it's like one arm is like reaching and looking at the world, and sort of like, you know, it's like I'm suspended in space and I'm looking at the earth, and there's this really, really bright light that's brighter than light itself, but I'm facing the earth, and my eyes are just looking at all the desires and cravings and all the lifetimes I've ever had, and I'm reaching out to that, but then it's like this slow turning of my face towards that light, and I'm not ready to really fully look at it, so I just keep kind of having this fight between, you know, what I want and what Baba wants, and just this surrendering is yeah, it just reminds me about that. I was thinking a lot about that today as I was writing. I was just like, you know, we can't just jump in. I think I read somewhere in discourses like if we just suddenly jumped into extreme, you know, like, but what he's actually saying, we just fall into negative passivity. We just be like, you know, what's there to live for? But we're sort of stuck in the game, I think. So yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to share that concept or idea popped up in my head when we're talking about provisional ego.
Yeah, no, that's the dilemma right there. That's the whole spiritual life right there. There's the lower values of selfishness, and there are the higher values of Baba's love, and it's a conversion. You know, we're trying to convert our selfishness over to love. We're trying to convert stinginess over to generosity, patience, anger over to patience. It's a very slow, gradual process, but if you get into it, it's kind of exciting. Even the little bit of progress we make can be thrilling. And I know Erich once said, spiritual progress is very, 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 very gradual. 4 varies. No American would go for 4 varies. You know, it's very slow, but it's slow and sure. But yeah, but that's the challenge right there. You know, you'd like to be able to be loving and everything, and you lost your temper. You know, one way to that Erich said to deal with losing your temper is apologize afterwards. It's humiliating to have to apologize, but it works. If you know you're going to have to apologize, you're less apt to lose your temper. You know. Anyway.
Go ahead, Denny.
Yeah.
Thank you, Angela. Jeff, do you remember a story about a guy that was drinking coffee one day and sitting around with his friends, and he said something like, you know, if I would believe in a fellow that would sit down, if God would come and sit down with me. Can you tell us that story a little bit?
Well, let's save that. I'll save that, Denny. That's my old buddy from 7th grade right there. Look what happened to him. In 40 years. Okay, let's go on. Integrity of purpose. But I'll remember that, Denny.
Wait. Time up.
Yeah.
Stuart Baker, go ahead.
Yeah, this last sentence just really grabs me. It comes about when we have matured in consciousness to such an extent that pursuing our beloved ideal becomes a necessity for us.
Yeah.
Like we could not do anything but that, you know?
Exactly. Your conscience won't let you do anything less. That song, Nothing Less Than Everything Will Do, right? That beautiful song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just building on what Stuart was saying, what occurs to me was that isn't it wonderful that Baba has devised this Maya that it's just absolutely impossible not to get to that place where it's absolutely a necessity, because if we screw up, we keep screwing up, we keep suffering. And eventually, at some point, it's just, we don't have a choice. Like there's no other, we just keep getting led back to Baba. And, so it may take us a while, but it's kind of a built-in system.
Yeah. Yeah, it's forever deficient. That, yeah. Okay. Integrity of purpose. Okay.
Hey, I was just thinking about that last paragraph as well. I love that paragraph, and it's like there's an ache in it, It's like when things are not, when I'm away from Baba, there's just things, I'm pulled back, and there's a feeling of, I think I would say it's the longing. What he's talking about here is the longing, because it feels like that same ache of, oh, I'm off track, or I've missed a day, or I need to do my prayers, or I need to do something for somebody, or some way of action that reminds me of Baba. That feels like I'm being pulled back through the longing. So.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, the intuition and longing is like perfect pitch, and it can tell whether your life is in tune, whether it's flat or sharp. And you make adjustments. Yeah. Okay.
All right. I think I'm going to call on Richard and Cynthia to read.
Oh, there.
Wow. You go for it. Oh, we have to get on. Oh, we're unmuted. Okay. Hello, everyone. So, freedom through love and love through freedom. Love is the medium of exchange between the master and the disciple. So we have to develop our love of God incarnate, love of the Christ. As we make efforts to love him, he helps us in his own way, in ways we cannot imagine. His love, a river of truth, power, light, and strength, inundates us. And far more powerful than any illusion, it erodes away our addiction to the creation. We need to develop one-pointed focus on him through love and self-surrender. As we love the Master more and love God more, a latent sense within us opens up. And through our own intuition and insight, we can see that we need not be limited. Meher Baba says that we are not the limited ego, the finite little creature we think we are. In reality, we are the soul, we are spirit. The soul is always free, always eternal. What Baba is saying is that we are timeless, and we can experience the fact of our being spirit here and now. We do not have to wait until we drop the body.
As spirit, we are above reincarnations and personalities, gain and loss, and good and evil. We are meant to discover this now, to live at the level of the spirit, not at the level of the body, which is merely the storefront for our business, an instrument for being conscious at the gross level. We are a part of God, every one of us. It is toward this consciousness that the Master is leading us so that we will get free of the wheel of reincarnation. The Master wants to share his consciousness with us. That is his gift to us. In 1956, Mayor Baba said to us, "Love Baba with all your heart." When we are free from being dominated and buffeted by our sanskaras, we can love him with all our heart.
Wow. It's incredible that Darwin was just there with sometimes at a typewriter, writing this in his living room. What such inspired way to distill what Baba is saying to us. Yeah. Any
Daniel?
comments on that last?
Daniel?
Yeah.
Actually, one of the things that I really like about this effort and grace is that it sounds exactly like what Darwin sounded like in his meetings. To me, it's just like Darwin speaking. You mentioned sitting at his typewriter. To me, the image is him sitting in his living room in Schenectady and speaking out these amazing truths.
Yeah, in fact, we smuggled a tape recorder into a particular place I won't mention, and a lot of these subchapters are his just inspired responses to questions he was asked, and they became some of the subchapters of this. So a lot of it is his own just spontaneous remarks. Yeah, we call them inspired tangents. Yeah.
So one of the things about this section that really strikes me is when he talks about we can be spirit here and now. And I think that I know in myself, and I think maybe in others, there's been sort of this way of viewing all of this as being, okay, well, we can't get there now, but, it's maybe sometime in the future, but, it's some kind of distant event that we would actually become Baba or realize Baba or move into that space. And I was just remembering something that I heard Lynn Ott say once. And I think Baba himself may have said this. He may have been quoting Baba. Some of you may know that, where Lynn was saying one of the major barriers to us in our lives with Baba is believing that the realization of God or the experience of God is an event that is going to happen at some point in time in the future. So that's, and I think what Darwin's really doing here is inviting us to say, to let go of that belief and say, let's try to enter into spirit now. Let's not wait for some moment in the future. And again, I think there's a lot of things that go with that, but I think that there's a fundamental truth to that as well.
Yeah, excellent. That it's now. Now's the moment it can be done. Now is the moment it can be done, rather than thinking of it as a future event. Yeah.
Robin, go ahead.
When I look at this and read it, it's just so frustrating because I feel like I get it and like I should be able to let go of it, and yet reality that I experience as reality is so damn compelling, and it just feels like I get it, but I can't do it, and that's all I want to say. It's just frustrating or confounding or something, because it just seems like it should be simple and doable by now, and it's not for me. Get glimpses in moments, but mostly I'm just so. And, I feel like, okay, so Baba's going to use the things that are hard to get past in order to get me past them. But it seems like it's going on a little long. That's all.
Yeah. But yeah, he's kind of eroding away this landfill of the subconscious. which is the veil between us and being in Baba's arms. And that gets, you know, every once in a while a dump truck will unload more things in your life, and you lose that intimacy, and then you kind of harmonize, work your way through that, and then you're kind of close to Baba again. And then another dump truck comes and loads a bunch of garbage of your impressions on you. That was been my life, you know, and no sooner do I get things kind of harmonized than another dump truck load of impressions, my own impressions. Anyway.
So we need to get to a place where there are no dump trucks around.
Yeah, Darwin didn't have too many dump trucks.
No, that's Darwin.
I've got a whole fleet of them. Yeah.
Ruth.
Che Baba.
Yeah.
This is probably timely. Whenever this whole pandemic thing started, I found myself one morning, just caught up in the fear of it, caught up in the sadness of it, finding myself in a depression. It was really, really hard. I sat down and I listened to something that talked about the two different types of self, the physical and the spirit. And so I realized how much I was in my physical self at that time, relating to the body and all the physical. And that then I could move into the spirit self. So I guess what I did was I looked at what was going on, and then I tried to just drop it at Baba's feet and ask for help. And then I waited. And Baba turned the key. He turned me to spirit. I found myself finding a Baba book, you know, and reading a bit, and then Rumi, and then I was painting, and I just found myself moving out of that heavy place of body and into a lighter place of spirit connection. So that's how I have to go about it. I get into the physical and the body, and then I have to find my way back to surrenderance and always asking for the help. But that's just the way it worked for me. Yeah, thanks.
That's the way it's done. Beautiful, Ruth. Yeah.
Elizabeth?
Yes, this is in response to something that Dan Stone said. And he was talking about being more in the presence with Baba, not thinking that the realization or the oneness would be in the future. And I was reminded of the book, In His Own Hand. And there's a phrase, it's similar to the phrase of I am that I am. I can't remember the precise phrase, but the idea of Baba as eternal presence, of the eternal being right here, and then how to tap into that. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's on an overcast day, we say the sun isn't out, but it's always out. It's always there. Yeah. Okay.
Anna, go ahead.
Yeah. From the last section, I find the key was really, for me, love Baba with all your heart. And there are just some days when that love pours all over, and then there are some days when I'm struggling to find, where is that love, Baba? I'm just trapped in my own, emotions and everything that, it's just not happening today.
Yeah. I think we all experience that. Sometimes the intimacy is there, and sometimes the veils of emotion and our sanskars are passed before us, and we lose that intimacy, even though Baba is right there.
Yeah.
But even the faith that he's right there will keep you from feeling alone.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
because feeling alone is a huge illusion, a destructive illusion, actually. Yeah.
Were there any tips and pointers that any of the Baba Mandali, like Darwin or Eretz, gave on how to, you know, on those days when that doesn't happen naturally? How do you, I mean, are there ways that they gave guidance on, you know, okay, that thing is not happening? Do you just sit there calm, try to imagine Baba? Were there any pointers that?
Well, anyone else can say something to that? I mean, I know that for one thing, Erich and Darwin would always say, always imagine that he's there before you. You know, there's that. Also, well, let's ask Daniel Stone there.
Well, hey, hi. You know, it came to me, I was washing my hands and I was getting a little frustrated with it, but I was committed to doing it. And I thought there's got to be a message in this, Baba. And it kind of hit me in the head. I have a poster above my little room here, the old poster, "You and I are not we but one." And it came to me as I was washing my hands that maybe this is really an opportunity for spiritual integration. So maybe as I'm washing my hands, Bob is using his divine washcloth and just getting rid of a few of my little sanskaras here that are hanging me up. Is there a higher purpose to this that we can't see, but we can trust Baba with? It's sort of like Baba then embraced me in a way, flooded me for a little bit of time, you know, long, then I had to go back to it. So I'm trying to look at this in doing what I have to do, but there's being open to an open, I guess, spirit to come in, because certainly with these Zoom groups and all the immense, immediate, instantaneous connection that I now have with all of you that I've longed for so long, and it helps me be with Baba when I'm not with you. It helps me be with Baba more, better. This is amazing. So I think we just try to think of Baba in everything. I think Baba is washing away. Every time we wash, I think Baba's laughing and washing a little bit more of our sanskaras, so we can be there for other people too, and in their frustration, with that understanding, even if we can't voice it.
Radha, here's one thing that I gathered from the Mandali that has always helped me. It's something that Baba said to me back in the 60s, where he said, in every moment there is something loving that can be done. So if you're trying to love in this moment, and now you're trying to love in this moment, and trying to love in this moment, you are trying to love is love itself. So that you're always in touch with love. You're trying to love in this moment for Baba's sake. So you're never, even if you feel miserable, you know, but you try to do something loving in that moment, even if it's giving that misery to Baba, that's an act of love. That way you stay always in the present. You're always doing something meaningful for the sake of love.
That's beautiful.
So it's not, you know, it's not like based on results. It's based on your trying. To hold your tongue and not blow up at somebody, or when you feel like it for 45 minutes, you say, well, that wasn't a loving experience. That is love. You know, even though it's a miserable experience for yourself, having to hold yourself back from hurting somebody. That is love. So you have that meaningful, something meaningful that you can do. What would love do now?
That's very useful. Yeah. Thank you, Dear Baba.
Yeah.
Alan, go ahead.
This is actually what you're talking about is a question I had when I first became a Baba lover about 2 or 3 years ago. I was feeling immense waves of, love and overwhelmingly just tears when I'd be at BART or, the train or around people, and I just was seeing Baba everywhere. And then I started obviously feeling and experiencing that distancing. And it was very painful for me because it would be moments of like absolute, like, where did my father go? And I would write about it, and I was trying to ask other Baba lovers about it. And a lot of the older Baba lovers around me were saying, oh, you must still be in the honeymoon phase. And I was like, well, I don't understand what you're saying. That's not helping me. I feel very alone in this. and I couldn't really ask anybody about it. And so it's a question that I still ask. But recently, Laurent Weichberger asked me to write a little bit about my experience of surrender, or what does surrender mean to me. And I found this quote, which I'd like to share, which is something Baba said. It's in Glow International, May 1985. And he says, I bring out your weaknesses because I love you. Be honest. Weaknesses there are. Do not be afraid of them. Who does not get bad thoughts? They are the foundation of life. No house can stand without its foundation. Thoughts can be good or bad. One should take care of one's action. Had it not been for the weaknesses of everyone, there would have been no difference between me and you. So
Wow.
the very fact of Baba saying that bad thoughts are part of our foundation for me is like, we sort of, have a certain ground of choice when it comes to our actions, but the waves of lifetimes and lifetimes of survival and desire and lust and hatred and murder, and the worst and the best, and then we have to, one day Baba claps his hands and says, it's time to surrender. You come to me. And you have to just say, but I still want all these other things, but it's like, you are ultimately for me, I'm ultimately all the painful and terribly, especially now with the pandemic, fearful thoughts, because I have severe asthma, and obviously it would be quite bad for me to get this disease. I just like facing these terrible thoughts and terrible feelings has forced me to bow my head. Every single bit of it has forced me to bow at his feet, and it would not have happened otherwise. And it's horribly beautiful, but it's part of my experience with your question. So he's always there, even when I can't feel him and I can't connect to that love, but I know it's because of him, and that my journey and everything I do is him. From now on, I'm in his hands, and I'm just falling into his arms, no matter what I do or what I say, or what it's just what it is.
Yeah. No, that's lovely. Yeah. I know one of Mara's favorite quotes of Baba's is, seeds germinate in soft soil. I plant my seed of love in your weaknesses, not your strengths. The light comes in through the wound, as Rumi would say. It's not through our strengths. Strengths can be a little bit rigid, but that helplessness that you're talking about evokes the surrender, bit by bit. Yeah.
Abby had her hand up.
Yes. My name is Abby, and when I feel that way, and I do get overwhelmed with that feeling, I remember what Marwan Jaswala reminded us when I'd go to India about the importance of repeating Baba's name. And no matter what my feeling is, whether it's good or bad, I find if I get in the habit of doing that, even though there may not be a feeling of a closeness with Baba, I know that there is because of my past experiences. The last time I went to India was in 2016, and there was this very odd thing that started to happen where my mind said, there is no God. And it was torture being at Mehrabad with the thought that there is no God. And so then after wrestling with that for several days, I heard Baba say to me, you're just playing a trick on yourself. You know that there's a God, so don't do that anymore. And then he said to me, think of you less and me more. And he said that throughout the 10 days that I was there. Think of you less and me more. And I still repeat that to myself when I feel like I'm getting really absorbed in the sanskaras of thinking, mostly. Well, and feeling. Sometimes there may not be a thought to it, but there is a feeling. And I just start repeating Baba's name, and then that saying will come in. Think of myself less and Baba more. And that's what I do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Paula Roper, you have your hand up.
Yeah. You know, it's His grace when we feel so close to Him and He gives us that gift. What grace that is. And then in the dry time, sometimes I feel like Baba's asking, do you love me now? Do you love me now? You know, it's like, and he, in those images of like in the films with Charles and Wendy, where he pulls them close and pushes them away, pulls them close and pushes them away, how he creates longing in us. So I think that's part of it too, is he's helping create longing in us. Because we do, when we don't feel that intimacy, yeah, it can be devastating. So anyway, that's just what I think. I think sometimes he's saying, do you love me now?
Beautiful.
That was it.
I like that phrase. Do you love me now?
Mm-hmm.
What a question. Or what would love do now is another simple, succinct way of thinking about all this.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we go on? Shall we go on to the...
Wait.
Oh,
Kathy,
okay.
Kathy, you've got your hand up?
Oh, yes. I was just going to say what I do when that happens is I go outside and go out to nature. And when I get out in nature, I feel that being with the flowers and the trees is always, even when I was a kid, that was God in purest form for me. And so when you go out there, and when I start to commune with nature, then I start to feel Baba again. And then I usually sing. And that really, really helps. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. There was a Baba lover who used to come to the center, and he said, nature is my cathedral.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
One of the things that I remember Darwin saying when somebody asked him, how do you remember Baba? He said, just talk to Baba, just carry on a conversation with Baba. And you're automatically thinking of him. So that's what I try to do.
And he's automatically listening. Yeah. Anything that, any last kind of comments that come to somebody, or a quote? Oh, Gabriella Tall, I think.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about remembering Baba, and that's sometimes hard for me. So I asked Baba for help. And Baba is so loving that what came to me in meditation is when you hear the birds sing, take my name. And the birds are always singing now in springtime. And it's such a delight. So I just wanted to share.
Yeah, lovely.
They're chirpier even. They're even more chirpier now than before.
Oh yes.
Less pollution.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to say that Jeff tells me about getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and spending time with Baba. And I've caught on to that a few times. This morning I woke up early. But at 7 o'clock I was ready to play some kind of game, to entertain myself. So I went and pulled up my Sudoku board. And as I was playing, I thought, hey, Baba, how about playing with me? You take a turn and I'll take a turn. And it turned into such an amazing, wonderful hour, actually, that I spent a lot of time laughing and realizing that Baba was trying to teach me to listen. And I didn't realize that at the beginning. It was so much fun. But we can have fun interacting with Baba. Now, right now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Who won the game?
Baba. Baba won. And me too.
There you go.
Any last
Yes.
reflections?
Yes. Paula and Kate, go ahead. Or Jake, perhaps.
Yeah, I just wanted to share from the last passage we read about the feeling of love not always being so bubbly and free-flowing, that in our experiences of Baba's love sometimes is just doing the next loving thing, which might not feel good. Our expectation of, or particularly my expectation of love, a loving act being something that feels really good, is my way of then limiting Baba overall. That expectation, that's the only way that I could experience or know Baba, is through that feeling that I would describe as being bubbly, warm, free-flowing, fulfilling, so on and so forth.
Yeah, very good. That's I'll tell you one experience I had with Mara, which was a real pivotal in my life. Mara was on the porch saying goodbye to a lady who was going back to the West, and I was just there. I was going to be going back to Mehrabad for the day. And Mara said, this is Baba's Mara, says, sometimes we feel empty, and I don't remember what the second word was, empty and depressed. This is, but we know Baba wants us to be cheerful, and we make efforts to be cheerful. Now, I was young, this is back in the 70s, and I thought, oh, she has been next to the source of all of love for decades and decades, and she doesn't have the experience of a joyous, warm, and flowing heart. And in that moment, I thought, love must be something different from what I thought, and I've never felt bad after that. Because prior to that, I felt like I would have this nice effusive feeling of Baba, and then it would go, and I would think, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do wrong? I lost it. But after that, I never felt like, if I felt empty or depressed or, whatever, I never took that seriously. I mean, it's like, they're like weather. It's like the winter coming through, and winter has to give way to the spring. And, the moods are like cycles of the seasons, but the love is behind that. But I was she was very frank about that. So it's not, if you feel empty or you don't feel Baba, it's not a bad sign. I mean, there's Mara herself, shoulder to shoulder with the source of all of love, and she didn't have that abiding experience of what we often think of as experiencing Baba's love. Yeah.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I'm just really wanting to say thank you to you and to Jeff and to everybody's here. This means more to me and this reading tonight than y'all can imagine. And I'm just really, really grateful for your patience with me trying to learn the technology. And Jeff, to see you again is so wonderful, and to be with everybody. So Jai Baba, and thank you. I love you all.
It's a thrill. It's a thrill. Hey, so let's have a few moments of silence, unless there's some last word.
Yes, Daniel Stone, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, listening to you about Mara and what she said, Jeff, and I was thinking about somebody who I know had once asked Kitty something like, so Kitty, do you always feel Baba's presence? And Kitty said, oh no, I haven't felt Baba's presence for years. You know, and I think and I think what you say about that it's somewhere behind emotions, that I think I always feel that Baba's trying to get me to find him in a deeper place, and the emotions can be at such a relatively superficial level of experience, and there's a deeper level. There are different levels of the heart, and it's going to these different, and Baba's saying, I always feel like Baba says, okay, you can find me here for a while and I'll let you be there for a while, but then I'm going to disappear and then you're going to have to find me at a different place. And it's just a series of successions of deeper places of finding Baba. And I feel like, at least in my life, that's been the process that I've experienced with Baba.
Very well said. Very, very beautifully. Hey, well, let's go to that deeper place with Baba. Have a few moments of silence. Jai Baba, everyone.